Protecting India's wildlife. The importance of clearance. India, a land of incredible biodiversity, faces the challenge of balancing industrial growth with protecting its rich natural heritage. This is especially crucial near national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, havens for countless species. Wildlife clearance processes are vital to this balance. They ensure that development projects don't come at the expense of our precious wildlife. These processes are rooted in essential legislation, like the Environmental Impact Assessment (EIA) notification of 2006 and the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. The EIA notification mandates a thorough environmental impact study for various projects, identifying potential threats to flora and fauna. The Wildlife Protection Act focuses on protecting specific species and their habitats, prohibiting hunting, trade, and habitat destruction. Together, these laws provide a robust legal framework for wildlife clearance, ensuring minimal ecological disruption. Wildlife clearance involves a series of steps, starting with project proponents applying for clearance and providing detailed project reports. Expert committees review these reports and conduct site visits, often holding public consultations to gather feedback from local communities. Based on these assessments, authorities grant or deny clearance, often with specific conditions to mitigate environmental impacts. This rigorous process is crucial for minimizing human-wildlife conflict and protecting biodiversity. By identifying potential threats early on, we can implement mitigation measures and explore alternative approaches. The Supreme Court of India plays a pivotal role in upholding environmental regulations. One of its landmark judgments established a critical 10-kilometer eco-sensitive zone, ESZ, around protected areas. This ruling mandates that any developmental activity within this zone must undergo rigorous scrutiny. This 10-kilometer buffer acts as a safety net for wildlife, recognizing that the ecological influence of protected areas extends beyond their designated boundaries. Activities like mining, construction, and industrial operations within this zone can have detrimental impacts on wildlife movement, breeding patterns, and overall habitat integrity. This proactive approach is crucial for preventing irreversible ecological damage and safeguarding India's natural heritage for future generations. Navigating the rules, wildlife clearance categories, explained. Understanding the nuances of wildlife clearance in India requires navigating a system with specific categories. These categories are designed to address the unique ecological considerations of different areas. First, within eco-sensitive zones, ESES, projects here require mandatory wildlife clearance from the National Board for Wildlife, NBWL, which meticulously evaluates potential impacts. Second, outside ESCs, but within 10 kilometers of protected areas, projects here still require wildlife clearance, handled by the Standing Committee of the NBWL. Third, areas with pending ESZ notifications. Even if a project falls outside a currently designated ESC, it may still require clearance if it lies within a proposed or potentially expanded ESZ. Finally, mining prohibitions. Mining within national parks and sanctuaries is strictly prohibited under the Wildlife Protection Act. This recognizes the inherently destructive nature of mining and its potential to irrevocably damage fragile ecosystems. These categories ensure that development projects proceed with minimal ecological disruption. By adhering to these regulations, we can protect India's rich biodiversity. This proactive approach ensures that development doesn't precede conservation efforts. Section 4. When clearance is needed and when it's not. Determining whether a project requires wildlife clearance involves considering its nature, location, and potential impacts. Projects within protected areas. Any activity within national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, or conservation reserves necessitates wildlife clearance. Projects impacting critical habitats. If a project is likely to impact critical wildlife habitats like nesting grounds, migratory corridors, or water sources, clearance is mandatory. Projects involving listed species. Projects potentially impacting species listed under Schedules 1 to IV of the Wildlife Protection Act require clearance. Exemptions. Minor projects with negligible impact on wildlife may be exempt from requiring full clearance, but these exemptions are granted cautiously. Projects serving public needs. Projects essential for public services, such as infrastructure development for water supply or healthcare, may receive exemptions, but environmental safeguards and mitigation measures are strictly enforced. Exemptions don't equate to a free pass. They ensure that even exempt projects adhere to environmental regulations. This ensures that development projects proceed sustainably, minimizing their impact on wildlife and their habitats. Section 5. Striking a balanced development and wildlife conservation. The stringent regulations governing wildlife clearance in India reflect a commitment to balancing economic development with environmental protection. These regulations ensure that development projects proceed sustainably, minimizing their impact on wildlife and their habitats. One of the most significant impacts of these regulations is the protection of critical wildlife corridors, ensuring the safe passage of animals between fragmented habitats. Moreover, these regulations promote the adoption of mitigation measures, such as creating artificial wildlife crossings and restoring degraded habitats. The regulations also empower local communities to participate in environmental decision-making through public consultations. However, there are challenges, such as the slow and bureaucratic implementation of these regulations. There's a need to streamline the clearance process while maintaining its rigor. Ensuring compliance and monitoring the effectiveness of mitigation measures remain ongoing challenges. By addressing these challenges, we can better protect India's natural heritage. Section 6. Towards a sustainable future. As India continues to develop, balancing economic growth with environmental protection will remain a paramount concern. Wildlife clearance procedures play a crucial role in this balancing act. Strengthening enforcement mechanisms is crucial, including stricter penalties for violations and more effective monitoring of project compliance with environmental regulations. Investing in research and data collection can help us better understand the impacts of development on wildlife and fine-tune our conservation strategies. By working together, we can ensure that future generations inherit a nation where both nature and progress thrive.